I'd wanted to write an album about zombies for quite a long time, but it was getting progressively hard to do because on the one hand, writing an album about a storyline is really easy because it's not about emotions, it's about a story that I happen to know and love. And but on the other hand, it's continuously changing, so at no point can you kind of stamp on facts and say, well, this is always going to be like this. And so in this ever-changing world, you have to look back and you have to try and focus in on permanent fixtures within the storyline. Like character development is a big part, and the characteristics of the characters themselves, that's very important, and the relationships between characters, and that's very much the focus of a lot of the songs. In Call of Duty Zombies, it's kind of hard to relay, or kind of hard to become one of those characters because they are so charismatic. They are far-fetched characters. They obviously don't exist, but they're Hollywood-style characters, so it's very hard to get into that mindset. However, there's also a sense of beyond those characters, you feel in that zone, and you do become the protagonist. You are fighting that battle, and that's what I wanted to get to. And from the very start to the end, it's always been about the character relationships, and that's always been a really important part. I'm not sure that I've ever heard an album like Zombies. I mean, I've heard metal albums, of course, or new metal as it may sound to many people, but it's more than that. That's just the surface of Zombies. My interest has always been in the mystery, beyond the characters and all that. There is a certain mystery, a darkness within this storyline, and of course that's clouded by a lot of the humour that's in it, and I think it works well as a kind of hand-in-hand relationship. But the most important part of Zombies are the secrets, are the things that we don't know, that you really do have to scratch beyond the surface to find those things. Those things are really important to me. And so from the get-go, I wanted to implement two things into Zombies. The first was real life, or not real life, sorry, storyline based secrets. Things that maybe I was the only person who thought about those things. And the second thing that I wanted to implement was my own viral campaign that I did a long time ago, and completely relating to Zombies, but trying to fill a void essentially between World at War and Black Ops. And what more and more people are noticing, now that we get into the kind of third or fourth month of Zombies, they're noticing the mathematical secrets within Zombies, and there's a lot of hidden artifacts, if you want to call them. In fact, there's over 100 different Easter eggs within Zombies, within the album. And you might think, well, how on earth is this even... where are they, basically? A lot of people, when they take a pad and pen to Zombies, they start to work things out, but a lot of them are far more succinct. For instance, one of the beginning song, Hellbeasts, in the chorus, I'm going from a 9th harmony to a 3rd harmony to a 5th harmony, and you might think, well, why am I even bothering with this? And what is that bringing at all? And it's actually not spelling out, it's actually illuminating 935, which is a big part of the Zombies storyline. There's more things like that, as in always the kick patterns of drums, very easy to hide mathematical entities within, and there's a lot more. There's an actual storyline that transcends from Zombies into Zombies 2, which is coming out very soon. And there's a storyline that we're only laying the seeds for in Zombies, and there's far more dialogue in Zombies too, and it really does tell this story that isn't related to Call of Duty. It's my own story, but I needed Zombies to lay the foundations, to get a kind of base test level, so that people understood, well, you know, there is a storyline involved and this is how it will go. But so far it's been more of an homage to albums that I've really enjoyed and things like that, but it's still important. There's still a lot of things in the album that a lot of people haven't heard. There's a particular section at the end of the last song called The Divider, where it's just rain and thunder, and people will think, well, I'm just waiting now until this bonus track comes on called Game Over. And they're missing some of the most important artifacts in the album. And there are some things in there that it's a shame that people aren't digging into it a little bit more. But it's very hard to find, and a lot of them are very hard to find, but at the end of the day, that's what makes it special. That's why it took so long to make. And you know, the songs themselves, they maybe take 3 or 4 months to make, and going back and forth in different countries and drummers and bassists and stuff, that doesn't take all that long to do, and I'm used to doing that. But intermingling that with this desire, this incessant need to manipulate and almost confuse the audience is very important to me, and I've always enjoyed that. So that's that underlying, that undercurrent that flows throughout Zombies and gets more and more apparent in Zombies 2. Zombies was recorded in various locations, various countries with various musicians, and it took the best part of 6 months to actually create that one album. However, I already had some of the songs beforehand, Eddie and Worlds Collide, and even Ascend, although that was the final mix of it, I had those songs already laid down, and so it wasn't essential to write every single song. But there was this kind of moment that I sat down when I was writing Dissection, which was actually called Dissected before, where I had some information come to me about what was going to happen next, and I took some time to read into it, and a lot of the information that I had then wasn't correct. I mean, but some of it was, and in fact a lot of it was, and it's very hard to think, to picture something in your head. For instance, the second sound you hear when you turn on Zombies, you'll hear some alarms, some huge sirens pouring in, and you can imagine this huge kind of abandoned town, almost on fire, like completely ruined, and you hear these sirens going off, these air raid sirens. The next thing you hear was my take on a bus noise, the sound of a bus horn. Now, I had no idea about what the bus horn in transit would sound like, so I just had to get a stock. I actually went out and actually recorded it myself from a bus stop bus. One of the buses near where I live is called a bus stop. The company is called Bus Stop, and so I actually recorded a bus stop bus, and that's what it sounded like. However, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same as all as transit, but it's interesting because I was having to picture in my mind something that I wouldn't see for well, by the time I was writing Dissected, it was 5 months. I wouldn't see transit until 13th of November. And that's really difficult to do because I didn't have all the details, and what I had was vague at best. And so I had to work in these kind of references that do get looked over, but hopefully won't get looked over once people start to delve into the secrets and to start piecing it together for what it is, because it is one of the most elaborate pieces of work in terms of the puzzle that it is. is the most elaborate puzzle that I will ever be able to make, and a lot of it goes over the listener's head, as it does mine, because when you have over 100 secret things, it's inevitable that I'm going to forget about some of them. So, and it does happen. But there are the big things, the big things that either spell out something or give you a code. And there are codes in Zombies. 110, 115 is a big one. 116 is even bigger. 935. There are lots of codes. 601. I mean, it's full of codes. And I think I've implemented every single code that I could think of into Zombies, into the album in some way. So that's that.
The year is 1943.
Hellbeasts came to me after going back to listening to new metal for the first time in a very long time. You know, my music taste changes as I do different things, and as I get older and stuff, it changes. And I always have a soft spot for new metal because it's more melodic than standard metal, and it's not thrash, and it's not boring either. It's interesting, and it sounds better on the ear. It's well produced and very polished, and so I like new metal for what it is. And Hellbeast stood out because the amount of #1 songs, when I say #1, when you used to turn on a new metal album, the first track would almost certainly just get your attention. That was its entire purpose, get you hooked so that you could then sink your way into the rest of the album. And I mean, the amount of albums that I've heard an octaving riff on is unbelievable, but sure enough I use an octaving riff, and it worked really well. It suddenly turns from this kind of placid and strange scenario that we're painting with the narrative into this big drop, and I didn't think I was going to start like that. I never thought it would be like that. I thought it was going to be a more melodic, a building up, like a tension, continuously building, and I did have a couple of other songs in line, and one of the songs actually I reused for Zombies 2, and it's now its own song instead of just an intro, and it's one of my favourite songs on Zombies 2. But I never thought it was going to start quite as it does, and there are lots of things in it, like I've mentioned the 935 being spelled out on the chorus, and the bus horns, and the narrative itself, you know, all of that builds tension, and dates are very, very important. And at the very beginning of Hellbeast, I don't call it Hellbeast because it's basically the introduction, it's the intro, but that's the first time that you hear my friend Jack's voice. And Jack has been working with me for a very long time with my gaming community, Play the Game, and he has one of the just most crazily good voices I've heard in a long time. He's not German, he's from the UK like me, but he has a really interesting accent. It's not convincing, well, it is kind of convincingly German. A lot of people think he is German, but at the same time it's taking this kind of comic twist on it. But that is what you get in Call of Duty. When you look at the characters, Richtof and Nikolai, Takiyo, all these people, you're getting an enhanced version of that character, and that's exactly what Jack brings to the table with his references and his style of narration. And he is a very talented voiceover artist, and so I had to have him on the album, and I trust his voice to carry the listener through. It's not too emotional, it's that kind of dead, dreary, unimpressed with the world, void almost voice that really does kind of hook you as well. The Hellbeast is all about hooks and getting you hooked into listening through the album, and you know, that's really interesting. I even managed to sync my community name into it, Play the Game, which is in the chorus. And of course Hellbeast is from Richthofen's perspective. It's his relationship with Samantha Maxis, and the issue with Hellbeast is that I didn't actually know what his relationship was with Samantha Maxis. I know that he tried to kill Samantha Maxis, and he didn't actually kill her himself. However, her death was, she wouldn't have died without his actions, basically. And what I'm trying to get at is what happens at that pinnacle, that moment that he would take control and she would lose her power. And so I think Hellbeasts sets off the album well, and I'm very happy with it, with its final version. The second track on the album is called Cold Dead Crows, and it's a really interesting track for a couple of reasons. It takes the perspective of another beloved old character called Takeo, and he's a Japanese soldier, but he has this very strange way of talking, and he talks in simile, in rhyme, and in metaphor. It's very interesting. He plays the wise man of the group, and I wanted to get him into the album in some way. The issue with him is that he's really boring, and it's very hard to get excited about writing a song, from his point of view. So I had to add other things that weren't specifically related to Takeo but sound like Takeo. For instance, he talks about crows, and at the time I was actually talking about other community issues that we were having in the zombies community, but it worked out really well that it would be about zombies, and so the crows would be zombies essentially, and it sounds like it's something that he would say. It's never been in zombies, and it was never part of his narrative, but it does sound convincingly like Takeo. And it's hard to gauge his feelings towards other characters, and so for that reason I had to detach myself from the character model that is the rest of zombies, and I had to focus on other entities. For instance, even the title of the track, Cold Dead Crows, is almost identical to an unknown entity that we find in Featurette called Cold Dead Hands, and it's very, very hard to detach those two things. But I don't know what Cold Dead. No one knows what this means. So trying to build up the song itself is difficult. Specifically because Takeo does nothing, he's just adding narrative to what the others are doing essentially. However, I do think he's a bit of a dark horse, and I think that we will hear more from him I know that we will hear more from him in the future, so I look forward to that. Another thing about crows, as I said, I mentioned this community issue with the viral campaign that I was doing at the time. Anything negative towards the viral campaign would be considered crow-like. It would be a crow. The person who is complaining or agitating the group would be considered a crow, and the opposite of that was a dove, someone who was loyal to the viral campaign. And I wanted to install that in some way as well, and it becomes far more apparent, the links between my viral campaign and Zombies 2 than it does in Zombies, but it's still important to recognise what was called the Henry Langham viral campaign in it somewhere, and that was the only way I could think about actually installing the word crow in some sort of useful way. About 6 months ago from now, I received a call from Play magazine, actually in the UK, saying they had an article to write with a disgruntled employee at Triarco. I think we all know who that is, and he was basically leaking information, and he leaked an awful lot of information, including game modes that exist now and game modes that will exist in the future, and they're all available online. You can go and see it. But one of them was something called 4v4 or 4z4, which was later scrapped and called grief mode. Now, I wanted to introduce that in some way. I knew the entire premise of it, and I knew that there would be a way to install it. However, you have to be very careful, and I didn't want to get anything flagged for copyright issues, even though they can't know the words Z4, but you know what I mean. You know, I didn't want to cause any trouble, and nowhere in the album is there any trouble. It's all very cleverly made like that. And but I wanted to mention it. I wanted to give it a little plug. And so in the bridge, it talks about 4 little birds versus 4 little birds. Why'd you sound so absurd? Which is actually a bit of narrative from a film called 1984. Not the birds thing, but why'd you sound so absurd? And it's a little homage to something that again would later come out and later make sense, but at the time I was locked in the studio, and again I had to imagine what this game mode would be like, and it's not too different from what I thought it would be, but still there are certain entities which are of course different, which didn't make it into the song, but that's it. And there is another huge secret at the end of the song, and I don't think a lot of people realise that there's talking within this kind of last refrain moment. There's actually mumbling, not mumbling, it's actually shouting almost, but it doesn't sound like that in the background, but it's actually on its own channel, so you can get to that, and a lot of the secrets are on their own specific frequency band, which I've actually stripped out so that there's only one tiny frequency band across the entire album which holds these little secrets, which if you're very good at using surgical EQs you can actually get, and you can actually hear what I'm saying. And some of the stuff is stuff that happened in the past, and some of the stuff refers to stuff that hasn't even happened now, so I'm very excited to one day make a video showing you all the secrets, and just and I think that would be fairly entertaining. A lot of it's wrong. I mean, even now, looking at what we have in Black Ops 2, there are a couple of things that I can directly think of. One in Dissection, which is a hidden frequency band thing, and another one in the song called Albtron, which is a secret song within the song The Divided. And you know, there are things which aren't correct, so but you can't win 100% of the time. You just can't do it, so I'll just win 98% of the time. So that's what I mean. I think that one of the fan favourites is a song called Ascend, and I think the only reason it's a fan favourite is because it came out at the right time. It uses catchy alliteration and metaphor to explain the circumstance of a map called Moon, or was originally going to be called Luna, or Area 51, or Groom Lake, whatever you want to call it. And I struck lucky with that because it came out at a very specific time. I got a lot of plugs, and I was very grateful for that at the time. And it's fairly what you see is what you get. It talks about Samantha Maxis again in a relationship, not only with Richthofen now, but with you as your kind of metaphorical protagonist. And you know, it sees you pondering this idea of what would it be like to go to the moon and to have to defend yourself from the undead on the moon. And it features a bandmate of mine from another band, and he's called Callum, and in this he features as the Crow. And I think he's got the best part in the song. I think he's an MC, he's a rapper, and I think his little part holds the most data in it, potentially of almost all of the songs in Zombies. His one little part holds a lot of secrets in it. It's very well worded. We took a long time, it's not very long, it's only an 8 that he repeats again and again and again, but it holds a lot of secrets, and he employed it well. And it talks about this idea of bringing you down to kind of brass tacks, to what if this was only a story, what if it was just Hollywood, and it wasn't what it seems. And then you get this idea within Zombies of lines. I talk about lines, I think it's 5 times within Zombies, and it purely means storyline. It's just my way of not saying storyline, basically. It's just a line. So I talk about her line, I'm Richtofen's line and things like this, because they're all different, but they do all obviously intermingle. But it was good because at the time I didn't know all that much about Moon. I was expecting something completely different. I was actually expecting what I'll come on to later, which is a map called Paris. But I wasn't expecting it like a lot of people expect it to be. And I have my own theories about, not really theories, but I have my own concepts about what downloadable content we'll get with Black Ops 2, and I'm very certain that there's a chord in there that's struck between two map structures that I have the idea for, which will later present itself in Black Ops 2. But yeah, I didn't know much about Moon, but what I did know was that there must be a reason that these zombies are on the Moon, because I mean, it's the Moon, so I mean, how do these zombies actually get there in the first place, if you know what I mean? And that's a tricky question in itself. However, it was later, well, it was actually explained in Moon, but we didn't know that for maybe a couple of weeks from when the song started. And it talks about, you know, bodies floating off in space and all this ideas. And it turned out that the entire staff at this station on the Moon called Griffin Station were killed in the name of experimentation, and were later buried. And you know, there is this kind of secrecy, this no one knows that this happened, and that's what I wanted to focus on with the Crow's part, and I think he employed it really well. And of course, one of the main things in this end is that it pays a kind of sodomical homage to Frank Sinatra's Fly Me to the Moon. And Ascend was actually one of the reasons that this album took so long to come out, because I had to get it checked, because there are a couple of instances in the album where I took ideas from other people and I thought, well, you know, I love this song. This song is like one of the best, most well-known songs I've ever heard, and I thought, you know, I want to take that and to make it something that would hold the beauty of the song, but would also completely re-represent what I wanted to represent, which is kind of distorted and malevolent side of what is in fact a fairly beautiful and innocent song. So and I think that worked out quite well, but it took me a long time to get it past copyright. In fact, in the end, both sides gave up because they said that it wasn't similar enough to the actual song to count as a copyright offence. So hey, you've got to win some of these things, I suppose. So that was quite lucky, I suppose. The next song is a song, as I originally said, it was originally called Dissected, but later became Dissection, and people will now call it Paradissection because it's this play on words of paradise and dissection and all that kind of stuff, which was interesting in itself, because actually at the time of writing this song I was dissecting a map called Shangri-La for one of our community projects, and so it fitted well with that ideal. But there is something within Dissection that strikes a chord with me. It holds this kind of Pantera, not just Pantera, but it's this kind of Mudvayne-esque feel. But it has the kind of melodic side of it as well. Halfway through it turns into kind of a really long bridge and final chorus that is very melodic, but it doesn't start off like that. And you know, I really like a song that doesn't always have a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro, a structure. I like a bit of difference, and this really was one of those songs that came off really well. You have to remember that when it came to zombies, there was originally 28 or 26, but there are a couple of stragglers. 28 actual songs, completely written, completely produced, and completely mixed, of which not many were actually chosen. I think about 11 actually made the cut, and you know, that's not all that many, and the amount of time that goes into creating and crafting and writing and does all that takes a really long time to do. But the other good thing is that those other songs that weren't released in Zombies aren't going to be featuring in Zombies 2. I had this thing in my mind that originally I always wanted it to be two halves of one album. In fact, it's even more than that now. I'm considering making a third album, but a free album that will just go out and kind of work its magic whenever it can. But Zombies and Zombies 2 needed to be different. They needed to sound different and they needed to be different. I didn't want to just rebrand this kind of money for old rope with the excess songs from Zombies. And so, for instance, when I was working on the original Zombies, I was working in this studio, but it was called something different. It's now called Hush Studios, and I had completely different gear. I was working very much in Ableton, Logic and Reason for those things, and with a bit of Pro Tools. But now for Zombies 2, I'm only exclusively using Pro Tools, and at no point am I entering synthesizers in or any kind of post effects. Everything needs to be as raw as possible for Zombies 2. Raw as possible, but polished at the same time, if you know what I mean. So raw from input stage, but then I will mix and mix it well with the kind of the individual untouched pieces of that jigsaw. And that's where the difference is. Zombies is always going to be a lighter album, and not lighter as in less screaming or whatever, but lighter as in more melodic and probably more commercial of the two. And Zombies 2, it takes a very different turn, and that's always been really important because I didn't want to release two albums that were the same, and so I think that does quite well. But if we go back to Dissection, Dissection talks about Richtofen from a null and void view. It's just no one in particular, it's just from your point of view. And it talks about Richtofen's extension, his where he's been, what he's done, and what he will do. There's two voices through Dissection, all the way through. And I wanted it to be one of the songs that has two, not distinct voices, but two voices nonetheless. In the verses you hear a slightly more singing vocal, and then you hear a distorted, almost screamo vocal. And they're talking about two completely different things. The first one's talking about Richtofen's been here, and I've seen his name carved in the stone, which is talking about Shangri-La. But the other voice, I don't want to give away anything for those of you who haven't played Black Ops 2, but it's talking about what Richtofen's doing with the world and this idea of control and this power struggle, which is very, very different. But the good thing is that both could be transit, both could be, not really, but both could be transit, and the other one could be Shangri-La. So it's a bit mixed because, again, I didn't know transit was even going to be called transit. I just knew a few things that I'd kind of helped out on, and so that was easy to kind of preempt what was going to happen next. But, and it was for a lot of people, it's not just me. I mean, there are lots of people who knew slightly more than the average community member, but at the same time I didn't know too much, which is good. And possibly the most important word and part of Dissection is the word oblivion. I still don't know what it means. I don't know what happens next in Black Ops 2, so I'm really excited for that. And of course Oblivion won't be Oblivion, because Oblivion is a game in its own right, so there's probably a copyright issue there somewhere. But the idea of a void, an all-encompassing nothingness, that thrills me. That I want to see something related to that. Originally I thought it was going to be about Moon, this idea of Oblivion, and then most recently when Black Ops 2 came out, I thought it might be this huge precipice that is in the wake of this nuclear explosion at Latchkey, at Nuketown. But I'm not sure it is that. I think it's something more, and I have high hopes for an Oblivion, but maybe it's just clutching at straws for now. I have to wait and see. It's very hard to talk about a journey in Paris. Whenever I talk to someone about Zombies, about the album and how it's been going and everything. And specifically like my friends, like for instance I haven't even seen a lot of my friends since I've been doing this, so I gave them this album and they're like, what the hell is this about? Because it doesn't make sense to someone who's not really in the know with the storyline and stuff. So they'll say, what the hell is this about? This is like weird, this is a weird kind of storyline. I've made weirder music before, but it's not about the style of the music, it's about what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about specific people, specific places and time zones. That's very hard to understand if you don't actually understand the storyline. But the one song that always comes back is A Drowning in Paris. And it means a lot to me, the song. And for a couple of reasons. It's actually the song that actually got me into playing the accordion, which I'd never done before. So that was interesting, and I'm very happy about that. I love the accordion now, it's an amazing instrument. But I wanted to give a slightly more light-hearted, I wanted to offer up something more light-hearted, because so far on the album we've had very serious songs. And you know, Paris, A Drowning in Paris is a serious song, but the accordion just does not sound like a serious instrument. I can't take it seriously. Although, when I was learning the accordion, the songs that you hear are actually really sad. There's a lot of minor chords in the accordion, and you know, it's not always the happiest of instruments. But the verse is quite upbeat for what I do anyway. It's quite upbeat. And see, there's something I don't want to mention. It's really on the tip of my tongue, and it's this duality. And it's all in the name, it's always been in the name. And I can't wait to, I just can't wait to see if it happens. And I don't want to give anything away, and you can think what you think at the moment, but I have high hopes for just the name alone. Not particularly the song or the song structure, but when I first heard of Paris, you know, with this idea of Paris, I immediately pictured in my mind this kind of fighting off hordes of undead, literally underneath the Eiffel Tower, because a lot of people don't know that there were actually Nazi experiments that took place very, very close to the Eiffel Tower, actually underground. A lot of people think it was literally under the Eiffel Tower, but it wasn't. But actually German experiments happening in Paris. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but it was a couple of doctors who, I think they evicted a hospital and started doing their own experiments on patients. I don't think it was anything like death experiments, anything that related to killing patients, but there were a lot of anatomical explorations and things like that. So I always thought it was going to be under the Eiffel Tower, because there is this kind of there is this mystery that shrouds it. I never ever for one second thought it was going to be the Parisian catacombs, which I've actually been to, and they're really boring. And I didn't think it was going to be that, because what kind of map would just is it underground? Well, I suppose we have that in Shangri-La actually, but you know, it's not a very good map at all, and it's pretty boring. So I always thought it's going to be surface level underneath the Eiffel Tower, and you just look around you and there are blimps in the sky, and there are blimps on fire, and there is fire in the sky. The sky is almost orange with the amount of fire around you, with all you can see these huge, not huge buildings, but the Parisian buildings, kind of old brick-built buildings, and you see just fire shrouding behind them, and just this huge landscape. I wanted that so badly, and I had it in my head. I really did have it in my head that was going to come instead of Moon. But it didn't, and that's fine. But I haven't given up on it. But I don't think, if we are going to be getting a map, I don't think it's going to be what I originally thought it was going to be. But what's really good is I know textures in zombies. I'm a real nerd when it comes to zombies. Don't know anyone like me like that. But I go into the game files, I look at textures, and I see all these things. And even in Black Ops 2, there are a couple of textures that have come from what was going to be the Paris map in Black Ops, and have come into Black Ops 2. And I've talked to my friends about it, and they said, well, you know, a lot of textures came through. Not a lot did, really. I mean, when you think about the actual map design, they really did start Black Ops 2 kind of afresh, and they did kind of skimp a few things over, but this is a lot of stuff relating to Paris. However, I think it's not going to be Paris anymore. I think the DLC might be something slightly more drowning, and we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. Who knows? But I have high hopes for Treyarch, and you know, they're not idiots at the end of the day. But I just hope that they live up to the community's expectations. And so, Drowning in Paris has this big chorus: "Paris is on fire, sound the alarms, and we'll watch them burn." And that didn't come by accident either. I mean, the exact words were talking about something that I thought might actually be a legitimate option, which is travelling from the bottom via teleporter from the bottom of the Eiffel Tower up to the top and hitting a button which would essentially cause a map-wide trap, which is just essentially a circle of flames around the entire map, which would destroy the zombies. And you know, it's not too far-fetched, because we have seen flames in maps like, you know, the Toad and things like that, and if the zombie spawns are literally just running at you from all angles. Because with Paris, the thing I really had in mind is that, you know, you're under the Eiffel Tower, but you can't see around you. It's going to be very misty, couldn't see around you, but you could see in the distance this kind of shimmering orange fire. You could see that, but you couldn't see what was directly in front of you. And I thought what would be really nice for a zombie map is to have a 360-degree zombie spawn all running at you from different angles. That is my idea of an absolute nightmare in terms of zombies. Absolute sheer terror, because from 360 degrees around you, you're getting attacked. That sounds like a fun map to me. It really, really does. But there are a couple of issues with it, like you can have you have to have a maximum spawn because of the way the PlayStations and Xboxes work. You actually have to have a maximum spawn in terms of zombies, and I just wanted to see like floods of them, so I don't think it's ever going to really manifest itself. But that was the idea. It was actually going to be a trap. The chorus is the trap in itself. And, there are lots of secrets in Drowning in Paris, and it has to be one of my favourites on the album for sure, but it's also the one that gets talked about the most, and also the one that gets played a lot by people I know, and also not by people I know, which is quite interesting. But it's a fan favourite for sure. The next song, a lot of people mistake it for an instrumental, and I understand why, because the vocal is so erudite. It's weird. It's kind of non-existent almost. It's almost ghostly. So I understand why people consider it an instrumental. But it's a song called "The Divided" / Althram, which was another song that I've written. And "The Divided" is nothing more than a reworded version of a later song that comes, the Divider. And the Divider, although it's the last track, it sets the sound of the record. And I always wanted that, because although Hellbeasts is a good start, it isn't the current theme. It doesn't have that theme of Hellbeasts all the way through it, but it very much has the theme of the Divider all the way through. And so, paying respects to that, I thought that the very first version of the Divider that I'd written was also used in a very different way in a game called Dear Esther, and a lady called Jessica Curry basically just asked if I could help her with some chords and things, and I thought, well, this is a really nice chord structure, and I said, yeah, well, that's it. And that's an incredible game, by the way, you should check that out. But yeah, it was just a piano riff, and but the very original version of sorry, not the very original, the second version of the Divider was completely different. It was far heavier, very chuggy, almost that kind of 1995 kind of Marilyn Manson, Mechanical Animals, very, very like that. And it was different. And then that later became the Divided. I changed up the guitars a bit, made it less Marilyn Manson and less glammy, and made it more rock and rolly basically. And it later became the Divided. There's not much in it. There's a kick pattern which spells a word actually this time, which is, you might think, how can a kick spell a word? But if you're used to my viral campaigns, you're used to changing numbers into letters and stuff like that, so that's not too hard. And the other song, Outrum, a lot of people don't understand why it's on the album. It actually came from a community member who made a map, a custom map for World at War called Outrum, and I said, well, I'd like to make some music for that, and I'd actually had a song about transit called Rabbit Hole. It was actually called Hole to begin with, then Rabbit Hole, then it just became a lyric in another song. But I liked this idea of an underground place, and by this time I'd convinced myself, not only convinced myself, I'd actually sent a load of stuff to Treyarch for them to use, talking about let's get rid of these main kind of big personalitied characters and let's get back to pedestrianising, make everything far more pedestrian, simpler characters, more down-to-earth characters. And I thought that that was a very important thing to do, and I thought that this idea of Mama Can You Hear Me immediately puts you into a different mindset, because I've been talking about the zombie storyline up until this very point, and then when you say Mama Can You Hear Me, it's actually taking you into a person, into an ideal, into a into conception of their thought process. And that's very different from telling a story, and so I wanted it in the album. I'd heard about this little place underneath it, at that time I just called it the map. But I heard about this little place that you could go to where you'd have to turn on the power, and it was underground and all this stuff. And I thought it sounded very like a group 935, which is the people who are basically ruining things. I thought it sounded very much like one of their bases, and I always called that down the rabbit hole, come down the rabbit hole, because I didn't understand essentially what it would be, and at the end of the day it came out as being not quite as glamorous as I thought it would be. But I thought it was going to be this big open void of, or this big open space that you could play in, but it's not really. It didn't really turn out to be that, which is a shame, but that's always been my rabbit hole, and a lot of people asked me what that was, and even at the time I said I don't really know what that means. It means something about somewhere that's underground, so that's not particularly helpful to anyone, but nonetheless it's you know, that is actually what it's talking about. And so I wanted to keep Outrum in there because again it references something that's underground, and they went underground and all this stuff, and I like them, and it gives a break from both the narrative and narrative is in the actual Jack's narration and the storytelling, and that's very important to have a break from that before we go into what are the most important songs on the album. So the next song is a song called Worlds Collide, and it was the first song, it wasn't actually, but it was the first song I released for Call of Duty Zombies. And again, at the time, I had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I mean, there are a couple of things which I'll explain first. I knew a couple of facets about what would later be Ascension, but I thought it was back in the Cosmodrome. I thought it was a very different landscape. I didn't know it was going to be quite what it was, although I had a certain element in mind, and a lot of that did come into fruition, but I didn't really know what the hell I was talking about, but still. And that goes on to this day. I know things about certain things which are going to happen later which look like something in my head, but later on become something completely different, and majority of the time it becomes something much smaller than what I'm imagining, but that comes down to laziness. And I just have an exceptionally hard-working brain, so hire me. But no, I'm talking about Worlds Collide and Grey Room. It's all about this grey room, and originally what I thought it was going to be was a room that looks very much like Nacton Totem, because I didn't know about this spinning thing in the middle. You know, I didn't know anything about all this stuff that happens, and I didn't know where you would start. I knew that it was a Cosmodrome, and that was it. I mean, I didn't know anything else, and of course by the time that Ascension came out, I told most of the community it was going to be a Cosmodrome, and that was it. But no, it was different from what I imagined. I imagined you start off in this kind of brick room outside of the Cosmodrome, and you have to fight your way to the Cosmodrome area. And by the time you're there, I talked about this a lot. I thought that the area that you'd come from would be completely disconnected, and you couldn't go back to that area once you were in the next area. And what I really liked the idea of was that Juggernog was in the original area, and that once you were into that the larger area of Bacon or Ascension, you no longer have access to Juggernog, which I thought was a really interesting concept, which I still think they should do, because that's a really good idea. But I've realised that in recent years they're trying to make zombies far easier for people, and I get that. So you know, swings and roundabouts really. But there was something that I had in my mind. I actually sent it to Treyarch, and I actually discussed it at length with. I actually discussed a couple of perks. One which later became something which isn't out yet, but will hopefully come out soon. But which is essentially stopping power, but it's called something else. But there was something I was talking about called Drag-A-Buddy. Now, I was talking about it before Black Ops came out, and by the time Black Ops came out, I realised that once you were downed, you could move around, because in World at War, once you were downed, you were stuck like a statue to that place on the floor, and you couldn't move, so it made you very hard. Well, sometimes it made it very difficult to revive that person. So what I thought would be useful is a perk that you would drink, and then you would run over to a buddy and be able to drag him at running speed for a maximum of 2 seconds whilst it recharged. Then you could do it again. Maybe only 2 or 3 times before the guy actually died, but you know. Because sometimes when your friend is in a corner in zombies and you're being chased by what could be up to 25 or 24 zombies, and he's stuck in a corner and you know you've got to get to him, but you're also heading into a corner, that's not a particularly good thing. So it's better to train the zombies around a couple of times, pull him out to the middle of the room and get him whilst he's there, because there's no threat then really, only from behind you, which is not an issue. A threat from behind you, Chris? And sorry, but yeah, grey room, and I've been here before, and I've sat on the floor in a grey room. Actually comes from a song that I co-wrote with someone. I'm not going to talk about it, but a really long time ago, and again called Grey Room, and but there's no copyright issue. I've already done all that. But it was almost very similar lyrics, and I liked the idea of bringing Worlds Collide from what was a song that was very light-hearted, very easy to listen to, into something that was not easy to listen to. And there was a lot of production technique that I used on Worlds Collide, and one of them is something called anti-mixing. I used it a lot on the drums. I didn't like the way I had a guy called Dirk who helped me with what he did the majority of the drums on Zombies, and did a couple of the tracks on Zombies too. And he is an excellent drummer. However, it sounded too good, and I wanted it to sound staggered. I wanted it to be, and it happened on 2 or 3. I know Dissection and Eddie have it as well. I wanted it to not sound as easy to listen to. I think some songs need to sound like a chore, and for that reason I chose Worlds Collide. And so the drums are very odd sounding almost in, well, to me they are anyway, because I know what I've done to them. But yeah, I like the drums in Worlds Collide. They turned out quite well. There is a solo part in Worlds Collide in the bridge, which has a refrain that actually begins the album Zombies 2. It starts off with that exact, the first song, it's a kind of an intro song, has that exact refrain, and it's something that actually came from my Henry Langham viral again, and it's something that's featured again in the solo, the guitar solo that is in Worlds Collide. And there's a lot of glue. All of these things add layers of recognition to for people who were there, who experienced that viral campaign, who were with me for this long, and in a way it's a thank you to them for sticking with this for so long and being my friends and all that stuff. And it's all of those little hints, those kind of subtle gestures, those relaxing remembrances, alliteration again, but yeah, all of that stuff helps to glue things together. And that's how I think Zombies sounded quite good as an album with the list of tracks, because you have to remember that Worlds Collide and Eddie were written up to a year before all the rest, and that's a long time to wait to redo them. So I think it sounded good at the end of the day, and possibly the most important song on the first album, Zombies, is the next song called The Divider. So the next song is called Eddie, and once again it was one of the first songs that I'd ever written for Zombies, and it made it easy to remake it because I had the entire structure down. It was just recorded at a studio in North London, and that wasn't ideal because by the time that I was writing Zombies I had such a good setup here that I wanted to redo it with a kind of professional, mainly a professional drummer, but other stuff as well, like professional post-production stuff and things like that. So I wanted to redo it, and it was always an intention of mine to redo it because I like the song, it's very catchy, and I wanted to make it slightly more gritty as well because it seemed too clean and stuff. But all that aside, it came at a really interesting time, and I used to hold little meetings with friends of mine to basically just get together to chill out and chat and whatever, get pizza and then whatever, have a beer. But at the time we talked a lot about Zombies because it was just when Black Ops came out, and we had a couple of maps, Kino and then 5, and we had those already, and we were talking about, well, what's kind of going to happen, what we thought was going to happen next. And luckily I already knew what the next map was going to be, which is featured heavily in Worlds Collide, which was the first song that I released. But what I didn't know was what was going to happen after that. But I was really lucky because I still have him to this day, but I didn't have him for when Moon came out. But at the time I had a contact who was doing some quite good work helping Activision copyright. Well, he actually works for Activision and was copywriting a lot of Treyarch's output, and one of those things was non-specifically a lighthouse, this idea of a lighthouse and this frozen tundra, this idea of this thing. And at the time I didn't really know anything else other than, I didn't know character names because it was very early development, and but this was coming around the same time as Kino was released, so I mean they were well into DLC by the time that Kino was released. They'd already made Ascension and all that anyway. So I was so excited when I heard about this lighthouse. I just thought, well, what could it be? I just thought this must be something. I mean, going back to the idea of the Eiffel Tower and the Parisian settlement, I thought it must do something. I always thought, well, the main structure in the maps must do something. And of course it didn't when it came to it, but I was so caught up in the idea that it would do something, and I still think to this day that it really should, because it's such a wasted idea. And we have this weapon, this kind of toy, this article in Zombies called the monkey bomb, which when you throw it, all the zombies run to it, they ignore you and they run to the bomb, and then it explodes. And I thought what would be really nice is having this kind of pacification device, a device that with the switch of a button would immediately make all the zombies stop just in their tracks, which would be really, really interesting. I thought that would give you, just even if it's just for a couple of seconds, that might give you the option to get out of what could essentially be a really annoying or trap, a corner, or anything like that, and get you into safety. That seemed important. But I also thought that needed working for. It either needed to be built, which is I'm very heavily into the idea of building. It was actually one of my ideas which I gave to Treyarch, which is do buildable things, which suddenly we have buildable things. So I don't know how that came about, but I thought maybe you could kind of build up and make parts for this lighthouse. And of course none of this happened. It was make-believe in my head rather than anything, but I still I still might hold my hands up and say I really do think that should have happened, because it still sounds really good. But yeah, there's this lighthouse on the hill, and when you find it, you'll make them still, and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty simple like that. And of course, at the time, I didn't realise that there was going to be this ensemble celebrity cast with Michael Rooker, Sarah Michelle, Allo, Danny Trejo. I didn't know that lot were going to be in it, so I thought Richtofen would be in it. But luckily, and this was not by chance, sorry, this was completely by chance, it was completely coincidental that Richtofen was in Call of the Dead. He was hidden away, still lying himself to death. He was literally lying and lying and lying. And so it kind of worked out quite well, and it was very lucky that they did include him, because otherwise the song would have lost its, would have been lackluster, it would have been a bit weird. But that had nothing to do with me. That was completely coincidental, and it paid off for that example. It did actually pay off. So Eddie is a liar, and he lies and he lies, and that's it. So no, Eddie is very catchy. It's probably one of the catchiest on the album, and it has a place in my heart because it was one of the first ones I'd ever written on them. It's important for many reasons, and you know, I talked about people talking to me about my Drowning in Paris, and you know, how they liked it so much. And the one thing that I get from people who listen to the Divider is it's really sad, like, and it is fractious in how sad it is. It's but it paints a very vivid snapshot of time. That's important, that phrasing, snapshot of time, rather than a storyline, because it's just a single moment that changed the entire storyline to what we know it is now. And Zombies 2, as I was talking about with the last song, the very first song in Zombies 2 in the album, which is currently untitled as it is, but it will be called something eventually, says, I will find you once again, you let go of my hand. And it takes that chorus from the Divider and extends it into Zombies 2, and that's important. There is more glue than just that, but that immediate kind of, like it was meant to be the next song that is played after the Divider. That's really important to me, and it was meant to be a double album from the beginning. The albums sound different, they are different, they play differently, and the Zombies 2 is far, far longer as well. And there's so much narrative, there's a lot of narrative. A narrative that doesn't make sense to people who understand the zombie storyline, but it's narrative that I'm writing, because this is my time to tell you the story that I want to tell you. And it just pays, it just says thank you to the zombie storyline, and now we're moving on to something else, basically. You know, Black Ops 2 will have its time, and there'll be a void after Black Ops 2. There'll be a wait for whatever happens after that, and there are, let's just say, chilling references to what will happen afterwards. But you know, there is going to be a wait for the entire community, and we'll have to sit through another fucking Infinity Ward game. But you know, after that we'll have something again to look at, and I didn't want Zombies 2 just to die when Black Ops 2 becomes unpopular, which it will, because of course they go in and out of popularity all the time. Call of Duty games do that, and they're getting more and more unpopular, unfortunately, you know. But they will have their day, and I didn't want the second half of this album to be finite, to have a time limit, to just mean something for a snapshot in time. It had to mean something else, and so I have to start something else with Zombies 2, and you'll know what I mean when you hear it. And but yeah, the Divider talks about Samantha Maxis and Ludwig Maxis, her father, and the atrocity that Richtofen performed with them in a teleporter, and later on what happened, all that stuff. And it talks about her letting go of his hand, and it's never happened in Zombies, but it's something that I wanted to happen. I had it in my head, like when I heard them in Derice going to this teleporter, and Richtofen locks them in ZC, and all this stuff happens, that's what I see in my head. I imagine him holding her close and saying, "Don't let go of my hand. Whatever you do, don't let go of my hand." But of course she does. And he ends up encased in a gravelly tomb, and she ends up at Griffin Station, and he then later ends up at Griffin Station because Richtofen uses the MPD to control him to Griffin Station, at which point he shoots himself, and that's the end of that. However, that's not the end of Maxis, and the Divider is important for two reasons. I knew that that wasn't the end of Maxis, but at the same time I had no idea how that wasn't the end of Maxis, because I don't know about you, but the last time I shot myself in the head, I died, and a lot of people do. You know, it does happen, people do die, and so I'm not quite sure how he did survive that, but you know, I wrote this opening track quite a long time ago now, and you know, all the songs that are finished for Zombies 2 now, they're just in post-production, and then we'll take it to the mastering, and it will be out hopefully in the next couple of months. But I wanted it to stay fresh, and it has to carry on that story. It always is. You know, I didn't think Treyarch were going to kind of reinstall the original World at War story and the Black Ops story in Black Ops 2, because in their own words they said that's the end of that season of Zombies content, and I thought that literally drew a line under what happened and let's move on. I genuinely thought that was what was going to happen, but at the same time I hoped it wouldn't, because there's a lot of stuff that's left unresolved, and it's stuff that we'll never have resolved. I know how Treyarch work now. It's not in their intention to explain everything, and the main reason for that is because they haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing. I mean, it's literally like headless chickens throwing ideas out there, but it kind of works. It really does kind of work, and I don't care if they don't know what they're doing. They make excellent games that I enjoy playing, and it's been something I've learned over the last couple of years, not to get too hung up on the small facets of the story, the things that don't make sense to me. Don't get hung up on them, because Treyarch sure as hell aren't getting hung up on them either, and so for that reason you just need to look past them and think about what's going to happen next, and that's always been the most important thing. What happens next? I'm always someone who lives in the future. I need to know what happens next in any way, shape or form that I can, and because it also helps with the songwriting, for sure. I mean, the stuff that happens next, I have individual words, not very helpful, but it does help me write songs, it really does, and you can kind of build up a picture with a couple of words. I mean, it's more than a couple of words, but you know, you can build up pictures in your mind, and you just hope that it stays true to that course, and it extends into that. And the Divider has this ending that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do, and the album gets to make room for this huge ending that I wanted. And this is an ending that blasts digital systems to shit. This is an ending that is compressed to the nth degree, so that the guitars and the drums and the entire song is at maximum level right at the end, and that's really important. So from Hellbeast onwards, the album actually gets a decibel quieter per song, so that by the time that you're at the Divider and you're hearing this kind of voluptuous mellow rock kind of, and also a lot of melodic rock in there as well, then by the time you're at this kind of very chilled out pinnacle, you aren't expecting this huge eruption of sound, and it's really hard to get over how much it sounds like that sound just wants to burst out of your speakers. It took a really long time to develop. I actually worked with two guys from Machine Shop who do bass, a lot of bass stuff, and I said to them, I need this to sound like it's about to explode. Like, it's so big that it's like a blast. I needed to sound like that, and they gave me a lot of, you know, 4/7 instructions and a lot of sub bass, and you know, it lent a timbre to that song that we wouldn't normally have, and I'm really thankful that it sounded, and I'm really thankful that it was a song that could really well round off the album, and I think it does that particularly well. Now, what happens after the Divider is a secret. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but a lot of people say, why don't I just tell the zombie storyline? Had that for years, Ben. You know, if you know so much about the zombie storyline, why don't you just tell it? And a lot of people don't realise that I've actually done that completely with one song in whatever it is, 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes. Done it, and that is the entire zombie storyline up until Black Ops. That's everything, and it's very hard to get over the fact that I could explain it in 4 minutes via lyrical transitions. And some people take, I mean, I've seen someone who's tried to explain the Call of Duty zombie storyline. He has a 34-part, this is not a big person, it's only a tiny channel, has the 34-part zombie storyline, which is fair enough, and that's, you know, there's a lot to cover. Each part is over an hour long. That's over a day, that's nearly 2 days worth of storyline. No way. And I've done it in 4 minutes, you mental. No, you know, there's a lot to cover, and what happens after the Divider was really fun to make, and it's got nothing to do with the album really. It's just something I put on because I really liked it, and it does tell the story quite well, remarkably well, considering how short it is, and so I like that for that reason. But there's a space before what happens with that, what happens after the Divider. There's a long space, and it's long. It really is long, and once again, there's something in that. And I really hope that one day someone finds what's in it, because I've seen people try and get really close. And I've had a guy contact me recently saying, I can hear whispering in it. Like, he said, I can hear whispering. And then he said something to me, he said some words. And I said, yep, keep listening to it, keep listening. And I said, do you have like a free audio EQ, anything to do with EQ? And he said, no, not really. And I said, go and find one, just have a little go, get some Bell EQs out and turn them right the way down, and get some LPFs and HPFs and just go mental. And, but so far no one's found that one, and it's only a matter of time, someone will find it. But it's long, it's really long, and it took a long time to record as well, but I really hope that someday someone finds that. And with the other, you know, as I said, there's so many Easter eggs within the album that it's kind of impossible now to find them all. I mean, I have them all written down. As I was writing the songs, I have a little notepad literally over there now with every single song with its time reference in each song and an explanation of what it is, so that I can actually remember what they are. Because there are times, as I said before, I can just be listening through and I've completely missed 5 of them in one song. And you have to keep it's not about keeping your ears open, because a lot of them, it's not just things that can't be heard. You need to keep your brain switched on, you have to be in the mood to find them. And there was a time when I was doing my viral campaign where I could trust people that could find things like that, and they're still out there. They just can't be asked. So, but that's that. That is Zombies in a nutshell. And as I said, Zombies 2 is on its way very soon. It's been a long time in production, and you've heard one part of one of the songs, but everything is subject to change. And on Zombies 2 there's been 45 songs, so far more to play with, and there's only a running amalgamation of about 12 songs, so not including narrative. But I think you're going to like it, and keep your eyes open for it. If you haven't already bought Zombies, check it out. I mean, I'm not really in this to sell you things or just nick it off someone or steal it, whatever. I don't care. But it's worth, I'm not saying it's worth your money, it's worth your time. And if you're a Zombies fan, it's really worth your time. And if you're a Zombies storyline fan, it's invaluable. I mean, you need it. And that's all I'm going to say. And I want to thank everyone who took part in the album, because there's a lot of people on it, and it's not just Jack and I. There's a lot of people, Reed and Dalek, Tom, there's who else, my friend Daniel, there's loads of people, Callum, and all the production stuff. I had Andy Sneap have a listen and all that stuff. You know, there's a load of people behind it who helped me make it what it is, and I really could not have done it without anyone. And I think it's the best gaming thing I've done so far, and I can't wait for you to hear Zombies 2. It's I think if you like Zombies 1, I really think you're gonna enjoy what's inside of Zombies 2. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble. I don't know if you're going to edit this, but thank you for watching me ramble. And you know, I hope you kind of take a moment to understand what's inside of Zombies, and I hope you go back and listen to it again. And there really is nothing better to listen to when you're playing Zombies, because it's about zombies, it's about the future of zombies, it's about the past of zombies, and I made it for the community, and that's what it will be, and I hope it stands the test of time. So thank you very much for watching this, and see you at number 2.